Welcome everyone to another edition of the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada Behind the Bench. We're going to be talking about referees today, and so I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists today. First, we have Fabrizio Stasolla, who is an active referee with the Canadian Soccer Association, and he's also got some experience in the Canadian Premier League, the newly launched Canadian Professional Soccer League, and Mario Iozzi, who is also a very experienced referee, youth referee, educator, working out of Ontario. I'll just before we get started, I'll remind everyone who's watching now, please, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free, if you have a question for either of our panelists, you can use the chat function in Zoom, or you can use, there's actually a little Q&A, question and answer box. Feel free. We're here for an hour, and as I said, it's a topic that should be important to all coaches. The topic is how referees and coaches can work together. And I guess what I'll do is I'll start it off, Fabrizio. Why don't you start by giving us your a little bit maybe about your background, how you became a referee, and then I'd like to hear your initial take on that topic, on that question.
Yeah, so I've been refereeing for now 18 years. This would be the 18th season. I started by going to games to watch my dad. I used to go to any field in Scarborough that he ever was refereeing, and every once in a while I would pick up the flag and actually run beside him if he was on the line as an assistant referee. But anyways, I got started basically through that, and then through my local soccer club. I played my whole life with Scarborough Wizards Soccer Club, and my dad was the head referee, luckily at that time. So we ended up our whole team. He forced our whole team to take the course. Which was interesting from that is I think I might be the only one that's still actively refereeing at any level. But the cool thing was, we started grassroots football, and throughout the years, I've just continued on. And I'm now, this will be my 4th season as a national referee. And I'm sure we're going to get more into that as we go. But even with the topic, I just love this because I think it's a big piece, right? Players, referees, and coaches. We're the big pillars for the game. And I think we need to work together, for lack of better phrases. Like, we need to work together at all costs.
Okay, great. I think it's a good response. And Mario, I have to say, Paul DeLeo just logged on and he said he only came here for you. So why don't you tell Paul and everybody else again a little bit about your background? How and why did you decide to become a referee, and how has your career gone? In that role, and maybe then we'll get started with trying to tackle that question in more detail.
Sure. Same frame as Fabrizio. I started when I was 16 years old. I was an active player, and I remember when I was younger, we had a lot of disagreements with the referee at the time. So one of the boys in our team, his father was a referee, and actually at that time, one of our good friends of the team was Gord Aerosmith. So he says, you guys are always going to complain, take the referee's course. So basically the whole team took the referee's course, just like you, Fabrizio. Your team was with Blizzard. We were with Gilwood at the time, and we took the course, and I think to this day, only 2 of us are still active in it, and the rest of all stopped. And so I stopped along the way a few times when we had children in our family here. And then my kids got me back into it when they said, Dad, we'll be a referee if you become a referee again. I said, okay. And then I did it again. Became the head referee at Pickering Soccer Club from 2010 to 2017. At that time, I retired from teaching in 2017. So I also retired from Pickering Soccer Club at the time as well, too. But still being an active referee.
Yeah. And I know, I'm here at Ontario Tech University. And I know, we ran into you 2 years ago, because last year there was no season, obviously, but we're still seeing you on the field now, and that's great. So again, the topic is about coaches and referees working together, and I've personally, in my own experience as a player, as a coach, as a fitness coach at all these different levels, I've always felt that things work better when coaches and referees do work together, but they don't always work together. And so, like, let's say, Fabrizio, what are some of the obstacles? Let's say that, in games, in big games, in important games, what are some of the challenges that come up when you're trying to deal with coaches in those situations?
Yeah, I think it's definitely points of views, right? Like everyone has an opinions. Everyone has their opinion on the field. 22 players plus the, even within your refereeing crew, and then every single coach involved, right? So everyone has an opinion out there, and I think it's the biggest obstacle to learn how to manage it. So some of the things, for example, for me is just being able to understand what the frustration is from a player's perspective or a coach's perspective, and then work with it and see where I can go and maybe like be better for the game for myself. But again, I go into every game and I start it from the beginning. Like I break the ice as soon as I get there, and then I try to see what the feeling, like I feel the coaches, how they feel that day. Because sometimes there's days where you can throw jokes in like left, right, and center, and then there's days where you need to just do the job and that's one of the biggest things for me is just feeling the vibe and definitely, getting through the opinions of everyone and how do you manage it.
Yeah. So if I'm paraphrasing, like you don't necessarily feel like you want to take the same consistent approach with everybody. You have to see how are the players reacting, how are the coaches, maybe the situation, how old are they, what type of game is it, etc. Yeah. So Mario, anything to add about that point? Or?
Actually, Fabrizio's dead on about that. It's personalities. So you got to go in there and introduce yourself, find out what the vibe is, as you said. Could be in a really important game. Could be a game they're playing back to back. These two teams, they saw each other last week and they're playing each other again. And so it's, they had a scuffle the game before. And so they might have a scuffle this game here as well. So you got to know what intensity this game might be. Is it a battle for first place, or are there two cellar dwellers? A lot of things like that come into play. Sometimes the coaches just hate each other. And so it just comes onto the field as well, because the players take it on as well too. There's a lot of things like that. But I'll deal with Fabrizio will deal with more of the national part, and I'll deal more with the beginner part, where we start with the youth off, or because I'm an instructor as well too. And so I'll talk about that part of it, and then Fabrizio will talk about the high level part.
The higher level. Okay, absolutely. So I want to come to a point, Mario, that you mentioned, because it's stuck in my mind, and I think this is a common maybe a common challenge that probably a lot of players and coaches have. You mentioned, when you were still playing, I guess it was Gord Aerosmith that told you, look, you guys are complaining all the time about things. Why don't you, take the referee's course and learn. So I think that what happens, because I experienced this too, even just through coaching and the laws of the game exam and learning more, that oftentimes if, once you start to see how difficult it is to do the job of a referee, then you're a lot less likely to criticize them. Do you agree with that?
No, because some of the worst players are referees sometimes are the referees themselves.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay.
So I know there was one referee who was a provincial referee, and he was terrible, and he was a keeper.
Okay.
And he complained about everything.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, though, it gives the players who become referees better knowledge of the game. They understand what they can get away with sometimes, or what they can't get away with, depending on the personality of the referee as well. And they know they'll accept calls as well too. They won't challenge everything. Most players like that. So it gives you better knowledge of the game. If you don't have that, you're going on past experience from past calls from past games there. And then you want to apply to the new game that you're in. And sometimes what happens from year to year, laws change. I mean, I still have people, when you referee the old timers games, you get probably this too, Fabrizio, they'll throw in laws of the game from 30, 40 years ago. And I said, no, that doesn't apply today. So you got to educate them on that as well too.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. So yeah, and of course, Fabrizio, maybe if you can comment on that idea, maybe even from your experience at the higher levels as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because we speak about the higher level of the professional game, and you would think actually sometimes it gets easier. I feel like it might actually get harder at times. There's games where I'm just confused that these players are listed as professional players, right? And it comes from sometimes then I that's where I start going to my head. Okay, maybe this is gamesmanship. This is part of it. They're getting into my head, so they want to get into my head by start questioning me. They're challenging me. But it's also amazing that over the years, I've also learned that because of the resources out there, players are understanding a bit more, and same with the coaches, to the point where they are throwing in laws of the game from past years. And then you got to remind them, hey, no, we're in 2021, 22 laws this year. So it's like, we're doing something different. It's not to say that, of course, at the grassroots level, there's now coaches need to be, they need to take the laws of the game test. And I think it's, I can't speak freely about this because I'm not too sure on the coaches front, but I'm pretty sure like they take it all the way throughout. You need to have some sort of an understanding. But at the end of the day, I think what's really interesting about it is sometimes people forget we all love the game of football and we all watch the same game. But of course, we all have, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's all the same opinions, different opinions about what we read and what we understand from laws of the game, right? Because everyone wants it a certain way to benefit them. So that's one thing I've learned for sure.
That's an interesting point you mentioned about gamesmanship and, is it possible that, players are trying to influence you? So I want to come back to that. But first, I'd like to touch on maybe something that Mario said, which, like, do you believe, Mario, that, let's say, if young players get some experience refereeing, even if it's starting as a house league or, kind of at the lower level, whatever, will that make them a better player?
I think it will help them, definitely. They'll understand what a direct and indirect free kick may be. So that way they don't have to delay themselves and ask the referee, is this direct or indirect? I mean, I even get that at the men's level, where it's a blatant handball, and the ball's set up, and they'll say, is it direct or indirect? And I'll say, it's a handball. Yeah, but is it direct or indirect? And they won't know either, eh? So, but as Fabrizio said, there's more education out there online where you can see. There's tests you can take online as well too. So it's really good. And you go on YouTube and see all kinds of things as well that educate you. Some things are good and some things are bad, but as long as you take the good stuff and roll with that and ask questions. And I'm sure Fabrizio and any referee will tell you, every game is a learning experience. And as a group, if you have a crew, you're teaching each other, you're trying to make yourself a better crew all the time. You're a better official, whether you're on the line or the fourth official or the head referee. You're trying to do the best you possibly can. And every game is a challenge. I mean, I tell kids in the class when I was a teacher that, we can see an accident and we can see an accident have two different opinions on it. Just like a foul, you might see two different opinions because one person standing on one corner and the other person standing on a different corner. And because your perspective is totally different, you see a different foul or different person at fault here. Same thing with coaches and players, because positioning the referee is extremely important in this case. Mm-hmm. So if your position is great, you're going to call it the way you saw it, not the way someone else saw it from a different position or another, 50 yards away.
Great. So, and I know you're talking about positioning, and maybe we can. I want to in a little bit maybe speak about the physical side of refereeing and how that affects positioning. But before that, I would say then, is it let's say some of the maybe the criticism that referees experience then is some of that warranted, and maybe what can referees do to make sure that their performance is optimal? Of course, they need to know the laws of the game and everything, but what else do they need to do?
Do you want to go over this, Fabrizio?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say, you know what? It's interesting because like it kind of ties in with positioning, right? But at the same time, at this, not just that, I think, again, what we do, no matter what, whether we're right in the game, it's going to be right for one team, but not right for the other, and vice versa, right? And so every game is really our last. Like whenever we go out there, it's really our last, no matter what level. Because if you want to progress, like you need to have a good game to show that you're committed and that you're understanding the game. Of course, that's going to take years. It took me 18 years to figure it out, and still learning, right? Everyone's still learning. So I think what's interesting, I'll throw in the positioning part is, now with how many cameras we see on TV, we always we generally always see referees in the limelight, and that's something that we now understand, that if we want to make it, sell it to the world, sell it to even at a grassroots level, because nowadays everyone's got these fancy devices, right? So anytime there's a video, you better be in that spotlight in a way, because it shows that you're in the right position. Then it's almost like it's hard to argue. Then it starts questioning other aspects, like, okay, now what did you see? And why didn't you see this compared to this person and whatever? So I know, like I said, it goes back to the positioning thing. It is one of the biggest things that if you're there, then it's hard for someone to argue with you on your opinion of what you saw. And again, it comes back to that. It's opinions on the field. Like, yes, you're going to be right in law, but it comes down to your opinion on the field compared to the other two teams that you're fighting against.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly the positioning of the referee with respect, especially being, as close to the play, as close to the ball as possible, is very important. And I mean, so that brings me again, with my interest in the physical side of things, I have to, ask you guys, I wrote an article about this several years ago, and I've looked into the literature that at the top levels, it's difficult to find information at the lower levels, but at the top levels, that the referees are required to run almost as much as the players do. And in order to actually keep up with the ball and be close enough that, as you said, Fabrizio, that they would actually be in the frame if you took a picture, that they also have to run at speeds that are very similar to the players, despite the fact that often at the top level, they may be 10 or even almost 20 years older than the players. So how much of a role then does physical fitness and being prepared to be able to do that running play in the success of a referee?
So it's funny because over the years, I was still trying to figure out what the fitness aspect means. Like when I was a provincial referee, regional referee. So over the years, we've had different courses, like regional courses, upgrade course. And I think Mario and we did the regional together, right? Or was that, I don't remember if it was that one or provincial, but we upgraded together at one point. And, a big component of it was running the yo-yo test. And that was just at your grassroots level, if you really want to go down to that, right? So fitness has turned into the biggest piece of refereeing, and it really is your passport. And I take those words from an old FIFA referee. I went to a CONCACAF symposium once, and I heard that from him. And ever since then, it's stuck in my head. And this has been about a good 7 years now, and it's been in my head. And I've noticed being fit, like laws of the game is one thing, understanding the game is another. But if you're already progressing through the ranks, and if you're now in my position where you're a national referee, you should already understand the game. But now fitness is what really puts you in the limelight compared to others at times. And it's not just a fitness test, but it's also on the field. Can you perform? And again, the broad fitness it goes to not just physical, of course, it goes to the mental fitness of, can you deal with everything involved around the game? But definitely physical fitness has been one of the biggest keys I've noticed it's definitely helped me gain respect on the field. I'll be honest. And because again, where I am on the field, and I blow my whistle and someone looks and tries to argue with you, and it's like, really, you're going to argue with me? I'm right behind you. And then of course, with how teamwork works, right? Like, so fitness it's taken a big toll, on a lot of my, obviously off season. And then it continues on throughout the season and what you do with it. I don't know if you want me to go into more about like maybe my type of training, because it's everyone, that's another thing. It's individualized in a way, right?
Yeah. Well, let's get into that in a sec. I'd like to hear Mario's opinion on this as well, though.
Fabrizio is correct. Fitness is a key role if you want to move up. However, though, on another issue another point of view on that is, when you're in the lower ranks or just starting out, your fitness probably isn't as important. In fact, you probably don't even fitness test most youngsters. Yeah. And even when you get to an older age group, you're going to see some people who are not as fit as other officials at Fabrizio's level. And that's where you might find controversy then, because some officials can keep up, and then you're going to have a few people that are going to be lagging behind. And that's where that's where the controversy always seems to develop there, because they can't keep up with the play, some of them. And I got to admit that. But Some of those officials, though, as they get on in their years, though, have good experience and know how to position themselves pretty good, and they kind of know what to expect, where the ball is going to be. It's like when, Wayne Gretzky's father always said, "Don't go where the puck is, or go where you know it's going to go later on." So that's what referees, good experienced referees, are going to go. They rely on that part of it. But starting at the grassroots level, it's going to be tough to get the kids. First of all, you got to get them interested in refereeing. I always say they're coming over to the dark side now. And then you got to get them interested in progressing with the laws of the game, and then their fitness. Hopefully they already have the fitness because they're young, but then you got to train them how to use that fitness to their advantage, where they're running proper routes. And that's important as well. So again, we're going back to positioning again. Positioning is so vital, not just for the referee, but the assistant referees as well too. So that way the referee knows where to look for the assistant referees at all times.
Excellent point. And I'm going to ask maybe Mario as well, if so maybe if we accept kind of the idea that perhaps players getting some experience working as referees may make them a better player, if for no other reason than their knowledge of the laws of the game will improve.
100%.
Is it also then possible that referees, even young referees, will benefit a lot from continuing to play the game? Let's say as long as they can and at high as a level as they can until maybe there's a conflict and you can't do it anymore.
100%. And you'll know this from experience here. When you were the trainer for my daughter's U17 national team, when they were in Guatemala and in the World Cup there, my daughter was a referee at that time.
That's right.
But she didn't really like being a referee. But she experienced from certain things. I said, you can, if a call happens in a game, Madeline, you can sit there and take the free kick quickly or whatever it may be, because you can see, you know the call. You should know what the call is. And most people do. But again, like I said, a handball, they don't know whether it's direct or indirect, and they always stop and ask questions. And that can nullify a promising attack. But in certain cases there, that you can take advantage of those certain things there. Okay. And you can and get it, not get away with. One of the things I told her, and I probably shouldn't say this though, is, and they changed that rule now, that law, was a goal kick. And I said, have you ever got a short goal kick to the side of the penalty area, and all of a sudden you felt pressure and you didn't have enough time to react to it? Just step inside the penalty area and nullify the goal kick and then have it retaken. No problem. So that was a benefit to her. Mm-hmm. However, though, as young referees, and any referee in any sport, I always say this to them when I'm teaching the course: how thick is your skin? And they look at me and they go, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, if someone shouts at you and says, ref, that was a terrible call, are you going to become despondent about that call? That someone said something negative to you, and then put your shoulders down, and then you're not going to focus on the game anymore? Because all of a sudden, if you lose focus, you can be losing focus at a really critical time, or any time in the game it's critical. And if that happens, and it happens more than once in a game, maybe that's not for you then, because you can't take offensive remarks. So, I mean, I'm sure Fabrizio, and I know I have, we've heard all kinds of things, and it just rolls off our backs. If we took everything as a sensitive comment, we wouldn't be in this game. In fact, you wouldn't have referees, period. So how thick is your skin is always something I always ask them. And usually when you teach a course, and Fabrizio said it as well, and I said it too at the very beginning, most of the people that take that course, there's usually 25 students in a class, probably in the first 3 years, 15 to 20 will quit because of that alone. And it could be, there's other things involved too, but offensive comments, they can't take it, and they just walk off, they say, I don't want to do it anymore. That's it. I'm done.
So I just want to speak to that, and then I'll let Fabrizio respond, of course. But so is thick skin a requirement, or is it something that you can develop over time? And then I guess is that also a problem? If you're saying about, was it 1/3 of them drop out, or
I'd say more than a third. I'd say probably about 60 to 75%.
So that can't be good if we got maybe a lot of young aspiring referees, and whatever it is, 2/3 or 3/4 of them are dropping out, right? So can they develop a thick skin, and then maybe we can speak about what can coaches do to help us coexist. So what do you think about that? Can you develop a thicker skin?
Are you asking me or
Yeah.
Fabrizio?
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I can even speak to that actually. It's interesting because I think it depends on the age group, right? Because then we have like Mario started when he was 16. For a few years, he's in high school now. He's got a few more life experiences. When I started, I was 12 years old. I was still in elementary school. It's funny because nobody grows up saying, I want to be that referee. Like no one watches the game for the referees, let's be honest. So it's like, I want to be the referee, but oddly enough, I was a nerd in that sense. Like, I don't know what it was about me. I think it was because I grew up a lot of Serie A watching Colina, and it was something about him, right? But over the years, and then like I was also that guy during recess. I used to referee the games instead of playing soccer. I don't know what happened there, but the other part was the I think the thick skin that Mario even talks about is I keep hearing it as alligator skin, right? Because I guess that's also another representation of how to say it. And I think it's definitely something that you develop. It's just about but it goes back to personality. Are you an introvert? Are you able to, and it's not to say that extroverts versus introverts are better than one another. It just depends on the person and your personality. There are people out there. I know for me, in my earlier years, God, I wanted to quit. I don't know how many times. But then I kept hearing from the people that were out there with me to say, you know what, it's part of the game. It's understandable, but it's up to you. Like you got to keep going. You got to find your reason for it. So really, are you a 15-year-old child or youth that's taking a course to do that summer job and realizing that it's abusive, and you're like, no, I don't want to deal with these coaches and players and parents for that matter? Or are you just going to say, damn, this is pretty good, like I'm going to keep going with it? So I personally think that you can develop it. And it's also about, like, again, it's your experience. I was assaulted over my years of refereeing. I'm sure every referee has been in some form shown some sort of assault in a game. Maybe they knew it, they didn't know it, because that's the other problem. Is it part of the game? Is it not part of the game? And that goes with like the yelling. And because I also want to allude to the point that someone made in the group chat that I'm trying to cycle back to, that someone asked a question, and it's really interesting. And when you're getting yelled at as a youth, it might actually influence you in the game. And then that's where you end up making more mistakes, because now going to that point in the question, when you get influenced, you give that 50-50 call against somebody else. Sometimes you're not able to understand, like, know how to manage that, and you end up giving that 50-50 call as a penalty kick. And now you just, you're causing more problems for yourself. So I think, again, refereeing is all about experience. So it's not going to happen in game 1. It's not going to happen in game 100, because it happens every single game. And again, going back to even what Mario said, whether you do an adult league, whether you do a recreational league, adult league, or a provincial elite, CPL, USL, any league you do, you're still learning every match you do, and you're only going to get better by everything you do. And this is why, like I said, I think you can grow, because to this day, I still think every time I'm out after every game, I've grown another scale of alligator skin, because I was like, okay, I had to deal with that today. So, and it just keeps growing.
Yeah, right on. So, and I guess it speaks even more to the importance of maybe trying to minimize that percentage of younger referees that drop out because they're not having a positive experience or anything like that. And so I guess now, because you mentioned, and I can see from that question, it's an interesting question that clearly, criticism and maybe even a little bit of abuse it exists, and maybe at the higher levels, some people might think it's okay to do. It might not be okay to do at youth or amateur levels. But is it, let's say, is criticism of the referee at let's say the college, pro, international environment, is that part of the game? Do we just need to accept that, or is that something maybe that also we should try to?
It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. But unfortunately, it's, I think, the culture. And it also depends on, I noticed that here in Canada, we watch a lot of certain leagues, right? Like there is a lot of fans of a certain league. And then sometimes you get accustomed to watching what you see on TV, right? And again, it goes down from the grassroots level. Kids now know how to take these free kicks where they're lying behind a wall. Like it's little tactics that they're learning from the games that they're watching, right? So I think it's about the culture, about it goes back to dissent, right? So when dealing with dissent, it's how much do you allow of it and what do you tolerate? And this happened years ago, but apparently there was, I don't have the exact source of it, but MLS had a conference and Landon Donovan was the speaker from their players panelists. And the referee side, they asked, why do you guys yell at us so much? And this is another thing that's always stuck with me. And Landon Donovan literally said, because you let us. So a professional player of that stature is telling you that, you know, you're letting us. So it's how much you allow in the game and what you allow. But again, going back to it all, how do you feel that day? Did you get in an argument as a referee? Did you get in an argument with your spouse, or did you get in an argument somewhere at work in your work life? Did you get in an argument on the road getting to the game? And the same thing with the players, right? You need to go, and it goes back to the psychological, I guess. I'm no psychologist, but I think I love hearing that kind of stuff. And that's another thing that I've learned is sometimes you need to really dig deeper into not just the actual physical match in front of you, but it's the game revolves around everything around us nowadays. It's not just on the pitch with those 22 players, it's everything. So I'll keep saying it's like, how much do I allow? I know in the past, I used to be a very lenient. And obviously I've learned that, okay, if I want to be respected in a high league, then I need to be in any league, really, I need to be able to deal with that dissent and nip it in the bud earlier.
Anything to add to that, Mario?
He's right there. 100%. With what Fabrizio mentioned before is that he was going to quit a few times, and it wasn't for his people around him that were watching him and saying, hey, no, you're good at what you're doing. It's the same thing with youngsters there too, where when I was the head referee at Pickering Soccer Club, we used to have mentors involved as well. And I used to try to get out and see as many games as possible, because this is the first time where a young person is in charge of a game, whether it be 7v7 or 9v9 or 11v11 game, and they don't really have ARs there with them. They're on their own. They don't have their mother or father to go look back upon. They're on their own now. And you got to think that, you know, when I do an old timers men's game where they don't like to have ARs there, you got a large field. It's probably the biggest field you're going to have here. 22 players plus coaches plus subs there. So you might have 30 people at a game, not to mention the spectators there. And that's a big surface there. You got a hockey game, they got 4 officials there. Okay, you got a basketball game, they got 3 officials there. And the court's much, much smaller. So we got a large surface area to really officiate there. And you got to, as you know, as we mentioned before, fitness is really important in this regard as well too. So you got 1 versus, 22-to-1 ratio there. But mentoring these youngsters so they don't quit, so they need encouragement, they need that pat on the back there. They have no one to turn to. I mean, it's up to them. And I know sometimes I used to get calls from parents and saying, my son or daughter had this and this happen to them. I said, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing for your son or daughter. I don't want to hear it from you. I need to hear it from your son or daughter. So please hang up the phone and have them call me. And they're going, why? I said, because are you going to be at every single game for them? You can't go on the field with them. They got to take responsibility here and ownership of this now on their own. And so they're really starting to grow up then in that regard, eh? And I got to say, I got to be proud of this part here. At Pickering Soccer Club, when I was there, we'd have probably a 90% retention rate from year to year. And the only 10% we lost, 5% I'd say because they went off to college, university, and the other 5% did quit. But we had a lot of returnees, which was really remarkable compared to what other clubs had around the province, where they had to have courses for new referees every single year because they lost a lot of them. And so then you're starting from the grassroots again, where you're training again.
So yeah, so that's a good point. And I guess one word that's coming to mind, and of course, we've talked a lot about players and coaches, but our association is for coaches. And so I want to just shift gears a bit, just to focus on coaches. And the word that's coming to my mind is empathy. Don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but that if a coach is not able to put himself or herself into the shoes of the referee and kind of see things from their perspective, it's very easy to, of course, to be critical. So Mario, and now you touched on this, which is again like the fitness coach in me. I can't resist speaking a little more about this, but of course we know that in soccer the playing area is bigger than in any other sport, and we have only one person on that playing area. You've got assistant referees on the sidelines, but you've got one person again who has to do a ton of running. And this is where I think empathy is quite important, is because referees are expected more or less to be perfect, because if they make a mistake, even one mistake, they're definitely going to get criticized. But yet, players make mistakes in games, several at least. Some of those mistakes are tied to fatigue. So if your fitness is better, you probably make less mistakes because you got more blood going to your brain and less to your legs and so on. But how could coaches, because we're talking about coaches and referees working together, how can they have more empathy for how difficult maybe the job is, especially at the higher level where the ball is moving very fast and the players are moving very fast? But Fabrizio, maybe you can start.
Yeah. So even in the Canadian Premier League, right? It is a professional league, but we're not at the capacity in Canada yet. I don't think that referees can be full-time referees, where they can be salaried, for example, like as if in some countries are, right? So for us, a biggest part of it is we're doing all this while having a family, while having a job, and some people have two jobs, who knows. But we're doing this because of our love for the match, for the game of football. So a big part of it is, a lot of what we do, we do have a lot of background stuff to deal with, whereas a coach is employed by that club. And I know obviously in the grassroots level, it is more of a volunteer base, but now we are at a point where there are, more technical directors, more head coaches, club coaches, and different age groups maybe. And I know it starts from an academy system, but there's even in some local clubs where they have that, right? But those are paid positions where that is your job. It is your job to show up and make sure that your players are playing the way it is. They are, and, follow the tactics and whatnot. Whereas for us, although it is a job to be out there, and believe me, we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't enjoy it. But at the same time, the empathy part, like think about again, it goes back to the bigger picture of everything. So and you talked a little bit about blood flowing and whatnot. And, and earlier you mentioned about how we need to run just as much as players. I would actually argue and say we run more than players, because players have that ability to sub off in the 5th minute, 10th minute and whatnot, right? They have that, obviously based on injury, no one's going to be playing a short amount of time, right? But, they have that ability to be subbed off. They have that ability that when we go to games, it's the 4 of us, the crew. And of course there's instructors, the assessors as well, right? So let's call it the 5 of us, and that's our team for that game. But we don't get trainers and people to warm us up and people to even massage us on the side. And
I've always said that you should. I love to put that in there. I've been a big advocate of that, but yeah, you don't.
But and I was going to say, it's interesting because I've even noticed it now at certain grassroots level where you're looking at clubs, because the game of football has evolved in Canada. I think it's been a big thing to see how much it's evolved in Canada, like with Canadian Premier League. Our men's national team is looking really well, with big chances. The Olympic qualifiers starting soon. Good teams looking there. Good players looking for the team there. Our women's program. I think Canadian soccer has really evolved, and it's not to really gloat Canada soccer or anything. But what I'm trying to say is the resources are out there, and we have it. And but the empathy part. It's really hard when we go to a game, and again, we don't have all those extra resources that the clubs do, where coaches get, where I've now learned at a professional level, you never see a coach on the field, rarely, before the match, during warm-ups, for example. And that's my time that I love as a referee. When I'm out there for those 20 to 25 minutes, depending on what I feel like that day, my job is to go out there and actually shoot the shit with the coaches and even, staff and anybody. I try to find something, whether it be from past games that I've now built a relationship, And even sometimes one of the biggest connections was in the CPL a few years ago. Found out that the coach from Edmonton is a local Scarborough native, and I literally just said, "Hey, I read an article that you're actually from Scarborough," and from then on, it built my relationship with him, and it was great. And again, that happens for me personally every game. I find someone. But then, of course, it goes back to the fact that it's their job, and I'm there to enjoy my time and progress through the ranks, and really hope that it's not my last game. And that's where I kind of wish there was more of, something from the coach's side where they can be like, okay, whoa, wait, let's just, before I say something I'm going to regret. And it goes both ways, because there are times where we say things that we regret. So.
Yeah. So Mario, just obviously with your experience, a lot more at the youth and the grassroots level, and I'd have to ask then, we all can kind of agree that results are not the most important thing in youth soccer. They may be important, they may not, they have varying levels of importance, but since results are not the most important thing, then development of players is of primary importance for the players. And then isn't development of referees the primary goal for youth?
100%. Unfortunately for the referees, their training is on the field.
Yeah.
The majority of their training, they might get a little bit of classroom theory, but that's about it. So what we try to do, when I was at Pickering again, what we try to do is help them in a way by informing the coaches, the players, and the spectators that we don't want any bullying for the referees or players or anybody at the field at that time there. And what we implemented was, there was a boy in Pickering many years ago, from an elementary school, committed suicide, and it was from bullying. So what we did in Pickering is we implemented a program that said, "Stop bullying now." And what we did though is we got pink t-shirts, and I had to call Tiger from the Canadian Soccer Association, the referee in chief there, and I had to get his permission. And what we did, instead of wearing the black jerseys that we usually had, and we got these, I'm going to show you these pink t-shirts here. And with these pink t-shirts here, we had CSA's approval, where you got the CSA logo on here.
Yeah.
So we got the CSA logo there, and we got the Pickering Soccer Club logo on there as well. And on the back, we have "Stop Bullying Now." So if anybody's going to criticize a referee on the field, they're going to think twice, because they got this pink t-shirt on here, and they're going to say, wow, if I do that, I'm going to really look like a jerk here in front of all these people. And the same thing with players. I could see players where they got, maybe it was a foul occurred, wasn't their fault, but they got clipped and they wanted something more, but they got up and they were going to say something, and they saw the pink t-shirt and they shut their mouth and turned and walked away, which is the proper thing to do. But I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a good retention rate in Pickering, because of these pink t-shirts. Ajax took it up as well. Whitby did it for a while. I think Oshawa Turl did it as well. And then I talked to John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, a few years back. He told me to give him a call when I told him about this here, because he thought it was a great idea, because I wanted to introduce it to high schools. And then this pandemic started here, and we didn't have a chance to get through that part there. So, but that's my next goal, is to try to get it to high schools. And I thought Tony Camacho one time was going to do it with the higher league here in Toronto, but I guess he decided against it. They're going to work for warm-ups at least.
Well, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, it wasn't that T-shirt, but I seem to recall seeing Doug Ford on the news recently with a pink shirt. I mean, there's an anti-bullying campaign going on, just in general in the city and in schools. I think it's not tied directly to sports or to soccer, but
yeah, that's on February.
It'd be great if he's wearing it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know that's I think for Pink Shirt Day they call it, and it's anti-bullying, especially it's all around rights and LGBTQ, two-spirited rights, and of course it's just bullying in general. But it's a main focus, especially in the school system, right? I know, because I work in the Toronto Catholic District School Board. So that was, I believe, on February 28th, and it was Pink Shirt Day, and it's a big deal, like all over Twitter, all over the news. So I think the one with Doug Ford was in relation to that. Yeah. But yeah. So it is cool. It's a cool initiative.
definitely a good way to spread awareness, and it's a great initiative that you did there, Mario, for sure. Now, I wanted to just touch on something that Fabrizio mentioned earlier. So this is the concept of, let's say, gamesmanship, and again, we're talking about coaches here, so I want to speak specifically about coaches, and coaches that may try to influence the result, and obviously they're trying to do that by influencing a referee through what they do and say. I'm sure we all can think of moments where that does happen. How do you handle that? Is that something that is it more likely to work out in a coach's favor if they do something like that, or is it more likely to work against them? And how can we, because we're trying to talk about coaches and referees working together.
Yeah.
So how can you handle that? Yeah.
So I'm actually going to start that off with a funny story back from the Canadian Soccer League when it was around, and it was a game at Victoria Park Stadium. So Brampton United against another team. Coach at the time was an amazing guy, in my opinion. Like I actually got along with him really well. In this particular match, I was the fourth official, and this is back when we weren't even using headsets yet or anything like that. It was still the old school refereeing, which I stand by and I love because it brings back your original roots. But he was complaining about something, and I just remember going over and some of it might have been, I think you mentioned this, Richard, before, about sometimes is it warranted? Some of it might have been warranted, but again, it's all based on opinions. So I walk over to him and I said, okay, what do you want? Like, what's going on? Like, what really is your issue here? And he said, I want you, it was coming close to halftime. So he's like, I want you at halftime to tell the ref this, and that. And I said, you know what, hold on, give me a second. There's a lot of stuff here. So I took out my pen and my paper, and I just pretended to start jotting stuff down. I said, okay, coach, are you done? And he's like, yeah, now I'm done. I said, okay, can I give you some suggestions? And he's like, okay, very confused. And I looked over at the bench. And again, at this time, I was a little bit more experienced in this league. So I knew players, I knew whatever. So I said, why do you have this player on the bench? He should be up in the midfield instead of that guy over there. And I just went off on him in that sense. And he looked at me and he said, well, tell me how to coach. And I just looked at him and I said, well, don't tell us how to referee. And then it was like a funny little chuckle that I stuck with me for years, because this happened many, many years ago. And I've used similar lines here and there. But it really goes down to the personality and what you feel in that game. In that moment, I needed to do that because it was one of those games where two teams didn't really care. It was nearing the end of the season, and how I was able to feel that was just based on the bench. Like, you had players just like this and lounging about, and it was more like everyone was laughing on the bench. So I can feel that it was a good time to do this. And it's, to me, the biggest thing is we're human. And when we go out there and we're dealing with situations, yes, an incentive by something by a coach saying something to you is going to be in your head. Again, we're human. So is that going to be in my head the next time I blow the whistle, maybe for or against that team? And I've even done it where I was like, oh man, now this is going to look like I gave them a foul, and I don't really want to do that. Like, that's not what I want. So it's gotten into my head. So sometimes it benefits them, but I think on the bigger picture of things, it's the mental capacity of the person that you're dealing with, like the referee, since we're talking about that, the referee. And again, who your coach is. Is it going to be your regular coach that you know day in and day out, week in and week out, from different clubs and different organizations that you've dealt with for years? Or is it going to be the brand new coach because you're in a brand new league? Because it even goes back to grassroots, right? Like I might be a Scarborough registered referee, but under Ontario Soccer Association, Ontario Soccer, it's up to them to assign you whatever according to your accreditation. So I might now have to go to Oakville. And I might not know anybody in Oakville, no coaches, no nothing. I might get lucky and even know who my crew is as a referee crew. So sometimes that influences you more going into the unknown than going to someone you know. Again, going back to even dealing with certain clubs, I've seen this coach day in and day out, and it's just like, okay, yeah, it's just that person talking again. Okay, whatever. And it just goes over your head. but again, it can influence you in a way. And it's subconscious really sometimes. And for those 90 minutes, it becomes hectic because especially if they yell at you in the first 5 minutes of the game. Now you've got 85 minutes to think about what that coach said.
Mario, anything to add to that?
No, I agree with him. I'll tell you a quick little story that happened to me a few years back where I was doing a really high-level men's game in Whitby, and I was working with this two ARs. One was a provincial referee, but he cut his thumb that day, so he was all wrapped up his right hand, so he had to hold his flag in his left hand that day, which was fine, no problem. And the other one was a young kid. I never saw this guy before in my life, and I said, okay, look, these guys are going to be really mouthy toward you. They're going to be aggressive, so just stand up. He was a tall kid. He was like 6'4", and I said, just stand tall and be firm. Within the first 30 seconds of the game, there was a corner kick against that team, and they were cheating. They were using, they were encroaching and all this stuff there. And I was saying to him, just tell him to go move away. Count the yards if you have to. He wouldn't do it. So I had to run it from my position at the top of the penalty area all the way to the corner flag to move it back. Corner kick's taken. Same thing happens again. It goes out of play, and I have to do it the same thing. He was so intimidated in the first 30 seconds of the game that the whole game for him was a trying game for him. He was afraid to make any kind of call. And it made my job much more challenging as well throughout the whole game because everything was debated then. And you can give out cards for dissent, but then you can't give out 22 of them. Well, you can, but
yeah, and then
it's just going to go crazy there. But you're going to get games like that, and that's where you learn from it and you move on and make yourself better for the next game.
And I guess it speaks to that concept of having a thick skin and developing a thicker skin to be able to deal with that better. So great. So just one other thing, and I know Fabrizio touched on this, so I want to talk about this. I'm sure there's probably a lot of our audience that's interested in this and wants your opinion, both of your opinions on this. So Fabrizio, you mentioned, let's say, old school refereeing, pre-technology, pre-headsets, and obviously that means pre-VAR as well, right?
Yeah.
So, this is not a discussion of technology or VAR, but you prefer maybe the old school. Why? And what is it about the way the game has changed? That you see as a positive, negative.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I think we're in a world where I'm guilty of it. We all are. Where we rely so much on technology, right? So I've now been refereeing with with communication sets. Don't get me wrong; it's been the best thing ever. It's beneficial. It's really helped manage situations, even diffuse situations. But I think it's with something like communication sets, with headsets, for example, like it's a little bit easier to coach and help and learn because every referee is different. But I think, like, you bring up VAR, and it's so diluted through all the different leagues in the world that we are still seeing errors, if you will. And it's a word I've been using a lot is inconsistent. And it's just something that, it's going to take years to perfect. There are some leagues that I love watching and I love the process of it and it's good. And then there are some that I question, is it, because I don't know, I'm not there. Is it the association is it the league? Or, is it the actual officials on the game that day? Like, is their opinion confused in that situation? So I think when we remember the original tactics and what we learned, like grassroots, I don't want to quote the guy, but started from the bottom. Where you started from the bottom, okay? And you're taking that out, and you have to bring yourself back to that sometimes. And I found that sometimes in a game when something like my headset not working because of the wire, instead of worrying about that, I'm now worried about, okay, let's go back to that eye communication, the eye contact, which we stress a lot, and it's body language too, right? Like now all of a sudden, if you're all like, you're running up the pitch and you have to make a 60-yard sprint the other way, and you're trying to make a decision, you're worried about being finicky with this. or maybe your spray for that matter. It's not really technological, but even your spray flying out, are you worried about looking back at where it fell from? No, just go to go and use your original tactics that you learned. And that's why I know when I go mentor games, and people always ask, it happens. I was that person when the beep flags came out with the communication on the little button. I was so obsessed with it. I was like, yeah, I gotta buy me a set. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And then it was actually like an older referee who mentioned that to me and said, well, okay, great, go spend your tons of money on that crap. But then when it breaks, what are you gonna do? Who are you gonna call? Like now what? Are you gonna rely on trying to press the button? So I know when I go to games and I mentor and other younger referees ask me and they say, oh, can we use like the headsets or whatever? I don't have my own. And it's like, no, I don't even have my own. What do you guys think? Like we're made of money and we can spend $5,000 on these things? And then not only that, I said, worry about learning the game first and learning the steps. Like goes back to professional life, even any world we go into. Mario was a teacher. Did he jump into becoming a principal right away? I don't even know if he was a principal, but I'm just trying to use that analogy. He didn't jump into becoming a principal yet. He had to learn the steps. He had to go through the ways. So it's a stepping stone. And this is why I love it, but I don't. I still live by the phrase, it's a beautiful game. There's a reason why it's called the beautiful game. Football is football. And, with technology, it's enhanced the game a little bit. It's allowed for more understanding, going back to resources. But there are times where I just wish that they just canceled it all out and just let the game happen as is.
Good insight there. And Mario, I'd like to get your opinion on it too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've used the battery operated flags a few times there. I never got a chance to use the headsets. When he did use the battery operated flags, it messed things up sometimes because the referee didn't know which way to look. Mm-hmm. He got confused himself. And so, and I'm just not used to that flag is heavier. It's a thicker handle. I didn't like that part. I agree with Fabrizio in that regard. In terms of having maybe communication, I never had that opportunity, but usually, if you need communication and you need the referee's attention, if I'm on the line or vice versa, you just yell at them, call their name or whatever it may be. That's my communication. Eye contact is huge. You always have to make the eye contact anyways. So again, that's going back to grassroots, as Fabrizio said. You're just using old school, which is fine. I mean, 99.9% of the time, that's going to get you through. Most of the stuff that you're going to go in VAR, that takes so long to get finalized. You watch basketball on TV and it's a simple little play and it takes like 5 minutes to get it resolved and everybody can see it on replay 3-4 times. But it's if you just make the decision, you're going to win by the decision. Sometimes you might lose this by decision sometimes, but most of the time it's going to be a correct decision. Even with VAR, the decision's wrong sometimes too.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but it's again, you're doing it for the love of the game and you enjoy it. Good memories. It develops great memories and things to talk about as well too. I mean, there's always things that happen in my career in playing soccer where we won some decisions that were to our benefit, and sometimes we lost decisions that were against us, and we probably should have won. But that's it. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of different opinions out there. I mean, I agree with both of you that I think there's a human side to the game, which is part of the things that, one of the things actually that makes the game the beautiful game. And of course, part of the human side is human error. And so maybe there might be human error here and there with refereeing, as there is with playing and coaching. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just about 3 o'clock now. I'm going to try to summarize, and then I'll give you guys a chance to have some final words. So how can coaches and referees work together? Well, let's say referees, I think to summarize, knowledge of the game is probably the most important thing. And then you need a combination of top knowledge with fitness and a thick skin. Coaches would certainly benefit from participating in some referee training courses and learning more of the game. And obviously making sure that their knowledge of the laws of the game and is as good as it can be, and perhaps in combination with that and through that process they'll get a little more empathy, and hopefully that'll help coaches and referees to work together better. So maybe I'll leave it, Fabrizio, and then Mario, if you have any final thoughts about this discussion.
Yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, it's a big. We need each other. We need it. Without Mario even mentioned it. Without the referees, there's no game. Right? Let's be honest. Yes, you can have two teams scrimmaging against each other, but at that point, it's just a scrimmage. But not to be biased, like you need us, and then we need you guys to be able to coach the players, right? The youth up to the professional level. We need the coaches to be able to go ahead, because without all of us together, there wouldn't be no FIFA laws of the game. There wouldn't be no beautiful game of the European Championships, the Champions League, and all this. It is the bigger picture of it all. We need each other, and working together. It really comes down to we're all human. So goes back to the human error. We're gonna make mistakes in the game. Your coaching tactics might be a mistake as well in the game, but the one thing I always say is we don't point it out as much as you guys point it out to us. We get told more about our mistakes than anytime. And again, some of us, especially in the CPL, I've now, with it being 7 teams at the time, I was able to see the same 7 teams, and I've seen the same team a bunch of times. I was almost able to, I knew their tactics right off the bat. I wouldn't say I can coach them, because I think those coaches are very well respected and qualified for that. I am nowhere qualified to coach a team, maybe a U5 level team. But you know what? It is fun to see when we're out there, all of us, and a good amicable talk. I love a good talk with a coach, and understanding the two perspectives. We're going to disagree all the time with each other, but at least we talked about it in an amicable way.
Okay, great. Mario?
I agree with everything Fabrizio said. The only thing I'll add to that is that coaching is more challenging for coaches, that they have to win, because now they're getting paid more. Whereas when Fabrizio and I and you paid coaches, we're doing it as a volunteer basis. Now they're getting paid in a situation, so their integrity's on the line, their winning percentage is on the line. So there's more intensity in the game for them to win and get a winning record. They're respected for that. Whether they play good soccer or poor soccer, it's the winning percentage they're looking at. And I always look as a youth parent. If I had young children, I always went to the coach that had the best improvement for my son or daughter. I didn't care about winning or losing. I cared about, I think, it improved their skill level overall. That's what I looked at when I was younger as a parent or a coach. And then the other thing that's being involved now too is the technology part of it, because almost everything's being, if you're on a good team, everything's being videotaped. Every single pass, dribble, decision that the kids are making, it's all being critiqued and scrutinized and shown to the kids over and over again. You'll see it on TV a lot too. I mean, you watch the Toronto Maple Leafs play and they got their iPads right there and seeing the last play and everything like that. They're looking at the Jumbotron and all that stuff there. So everything's being critiqued and criticized to the nth degree now, which is sometimes to me takes away from the game. Instead of enjoying it, they're being, let's do this to improve. So, but if you just stick to what Fabrizio said, I mean, that's 100% there. And there's just those two other things. The pressure to win, I think, from coaches. And then don't forget, a lot of teams now, players, I used to always call soccer the poor man's sport and hockey the expensive, the rich man's sport. Soccer's not poor now. You got to have a lot of money to play now, because you're paying for the coaches, you're paying for the turf, the indoor facilities. Now we have a lot of indoor facilities that we never had before. So there's a lot of pressure to win because you're paying for it. You're paying a lot of money for that now.
Whereas perhaps the pressure should be more to develop. There's maybe nothing wrong with pressure, but perhaps if that pressure was more to develop, then there wouldn't be necessarily the feeling that it's okay to to be so, let's say, so critical of referees, because if the focus is development, then whether or not they make a mistake and that human error or human side comes out, it's not such a big deal. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, excellent insight. So I'll thank both Fabrizio and Mario again for giving up your time and talking about what is a very important topic, of course, for coaches. And how we can all work together and make the game better. So thank you guys again so much for your time, and thank everybody for for tuning in today. I'll leave it, just again to remind all of you, watching and listening, that we at the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada, we're trying to do as many of these webinars with top people from across the country and internationally, as many as we can. As you know, we've gone once a week for 4 or 5 months now, and we're going to keep going in order to continue to do all this. And continue to provide this to all of you and to everyone in Canada. We just need a little bit of support. So if you're not already a member, consider it. It's not expensive. It's only $5 a month, $60 a year. And there are even, special discounted rates available. You get all kinds of benefits. You get free stuff. You get discounted stuff. You get coach education. You get videos, webinars, podcasts, conventions once the pandemic is settle down and we can do that again. So I'll just put up the website in the chat at the end. If you've not yet joined and considered joining, it's www.nscac.ca/join, and we will look forward to seeing all of you at our next webinar, which is actually tomorrow. Tony LaFerrara will be speaking to Valerio Rocca, and we've got another one next week, and we'll keep it going. So thanks, guys, again for your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys on the pitch soon, I'll say.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. All right, bye-bye.